Well, it's already starting the streaming, so we will start the reading in just a moment, I guess, 1 minute left. Thank you,
Not
everybody,
even a
for your
whole
patience.
minute. I'm ready. What do you say? Let's do this. Lesson 216. It can be but myself I crucify. Lesson 216 is a review of Lesson 196. We're going to begin and end each session with the theme behind this review lesson, which is, I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. All right, looks like the gang is all here. Good morning, Papa. I hope you're doing all right. Thank you guys for joining us up here on the stage. I think we've got everything working great here, so I'm going to turn the page and off we go. I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. Lesson 196 is, it can be but myself I crucify. All that I do unto myself. If I attack, I suffer. But if I forgive, salvation will be given me. I am not a body. I am free. For I am still as God created me. All right, I'm going to read the notes from Lesson 196. We're still in these review lessons, and so right now the lesson itself is short and sweet. But to go back and get an echo of what we learned when we were studying 196, I think it's helpful to read from the notes. So I'll do that, and Tom will lead us in an activity, and then we'll have space for discussion. I can stop the streams, and we can talk freely in the discussion time. All right, off we go. Hope everybody's doing great out there. All right. So lesson 196, as I'm flipping through the book to get to the right spot here, I'm just noticing a couple of places that I highlighted, and I took a sip of coffee and I realized that my girlfriend drinks liquid magma. She drinks hot coffee, and it's way too hot for my delicate little tongue. All right. I'm just going to get some calluses on my tongue. I'll be fine. Don't you worry. All right. This part of this lesson is our next steps will be easy. If you take this one today of taking responsibility for what your mind thinks, from there we go ahead quite rapidly. For once you understand it's impossible that you be hurt except by your own mind's thoughts, the fear of God must disappear. All right, here are the notes from Tom's book, Understanding A Course in Miracles Workbook Lessons, How to End the Blame, Shame, Guilt, and Fear with Love and Forgiveness. The notes to 196, it can be but myself I crucify. It can be but myself I crucify is one idea that your ego vehemently opposes. For when this idea is properly understood, it marks the end of your allegiance to the ego, and ultimately to the ego's death. all of your ego's plans for your safety and salvation would become laughable and foolish. The ego does not want you to know that you can only attack yourself, since if it were known, you would quickly realize that your mind is the creative source behind your experiences. It would become obvious that your thoughts become your reality. You would realize that you alone are responsible for your own thoughts, and that you could not be a victim of outside forces that are beyond your control, as your ego claims. The fear-based thought system of your ego would be uncovered as the source for all of your pain, suffering, and unhappiness. You would realize that your ego is not your friend, but rather the source of all of your problems. You would decide to drop your allegiance to your fear-based thought system and get a new guide with a different system. Your ego's thought system rests on the idea that you are a separate ego body in competition with other ego bodies. It claims that there are outside forces that are competing against you for the limited resources that you both need for your survival. If you are to survive, you must take from another, for what is their loss becomes your gain. The ego says that you are a body that can attack another without your own body being hurt. Because of this, attack becomes your ego's best form of self-defense. When you realize that you are not the body, but rather mind, whose thoughts never leave their source, you realize you are only crucifying yourself. The idea that you can attack and not hurt yourself is predicated on the belief that we are each separate ego bodies, and your body is you. If you were formless mind or spirit, attack would be impossible. Mind needs a body if attack is to be possible. But if you are a body, you must fear retribution or the revenge from the other party. You need to understand that it is but yourself you crucify, so that to attack another is to attack yourself. This idea that all attack is self-attack frees us from the bondage of the ego's belief system. When this is properly understood, it leads to a state of perfect freedom. Our belief that we could attack another and gain something of value while not harming ourselves have led to our own self-crucifixion. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of this cross. When you believe that you can attack another because they have a body, you also must accept those same limitations and be vulnerable to attack yourself. This is the guard stuck in the prison again, guarding the person he's condemning. The idea that we can attack without harming ourselves leads to the belief that God can also seek revenge for our shortcomings. Thus, we transform a God of love into a God to be feared and something from which we need to hide. If like begets like, God, like you, is vulnerable to attack and will seek revenge upon anyone who fails to fulfill God's desires, God becomes a deadly enemy, and the fear of God is real to anyone who perceives God to be anything but unconditional love. It can only be your own thoughts that create what you fear, and your ego does not want you to realize this. When we understand that we can only be hurt by our own thoughts, the fear of God disappears. Our own mind and its beliefs are the cause of all that we fear. Fear cannot be caused by anything outside of our mind. Fear is always an inside job, which means that all fears are totally within our mind's power to control. If it is only our own mind that we can crucify, there is no reason to fear vengeance from any outside sources, since we are incapable of harming anything outside of our own mind. When you realize that it's only you that you fear, you understand that your own mind has been split, and that your ego's thought system has been the source for all of your pain and suffering. It is your ego's thought system that needs correction, rather than your ego's guidance being your salvation. It has been the source of your own ruin because of your misplaced trust in your ego. You have forgotten your true identity. You have allowed your ego to attack and replace your higher self with its own version of a little s self. This idea that it is but yourself that you crucify is the key to a resurrection of your Christ nature. When you realize that any attack is self-attack, you realize that it is your own mind that is the source of all attack thoughts. Therefore, there is nothing outside of your own mind to fear. You've now identified and met the enemy and know that it is your own ego. You no longer need to fear the world or God, since you have never attacked or harmed them, nor have they ever attacked nor harmed you. It was only your mind's use of projection that made it appear as if there were something outside your own mind that had attacked you. Now, you know it was only your split mind. Since your own mind is the source for all you fear, your mind must also have the power to correct those thoughts and heal your split mind. You now realize the power of your own mind and can make a conscious decision to get a new plan and follow a different teacher. Let the Holy Spirit correct all your erroneous beliefs, and the image of your little s self will disappear as you behold the Christ. When you realize the creative power of your mind, you're in a position to take responsibility for your own thoughts and make different choices. The fear of God dissipates, and you are only left with a God of love. Your eyes are now open. Your ego's fear-based thought system has been discredited. And now there's only one voice to be heard. The only viable choice that remains is the thought system for love and forgiveness. You have no choice but to choose the truth. And Tom's got 3 questions for us today. Who do you fear and why? If each can only crucify themselves, what is it that you should control? And finally, what is the true source of your fears? I'll add that into the shared chat. And Tom, why don't you lead us in that activity now? Thank you.
Uh, Great. So this lesson, of course, has the major theme that I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. But it's on lesson 196, the focus is on that it can be but myself I crucify. And I think it's important for us to realize that there's basically perhaps 3 types of crucifixions that we can do to ourselves. One is the one that we've probably focused on perhaps the most, which is this idea that when I condemn another, I have to sit in the prison cell across from him and the bars, anyways, of that cell, and that I remain trapped. I'm not free to live my own life because I'm still living in that past, having to guard that supposed perpetrator for something that he failed to do to make me whole or happy. That somewhere in my ego's game plan, that I felt that that person needed to perform, or society, or my world needed to, or God needed to perform in a certain way to make me happy. And because they failed to do that, I hold a grievance. That's the first type of crucifixion. We think we're crucifying another, and really we're in that same prison, having to guard him from our unforgiving mind. The second type that we're probably familiar with and that we've spent also a lot of time in is this idea that I there's something wrong with me, and that I need to suffer, or that I didn't uh, get the exact results that I felt I needed, and therefore I have uh, guilt that I failed. So it's self imposed on me because I feel that if I would have done something differently, the result would have been different and I would have been happy. And therefore, it's this belief that somewhere I lack, somewhere I've sinned, and that I need to earn my redemption. And in this type of crucifixion, I feel that I'm not worthy to forgive myself for my past, and that I need to continue to suffer a lot. And we've spent quite a bit of time on that type of crucifixion also. But there's a third type of crucifixion that I'd like to focus on maybe today. And it's something that a lot of times spiritual types, or people that really have a great belief in responsibility consciousness, suffer from. It's a mistake of what love is. It's this idea that we've been taught that if I love someone, I should be able to protect or fix that person and solve their problems. And that I somehow have a duty or responsibility to make them happy, to make them whole and complete, to somehow, in my egoic mind, believe that they are incapable, that they're a sinner, that they're too stupid or whatever to handle their own life and to go on their own perfect path, and that I somehow have a responsibility to make them happy or to make them so that they don't decide to do drugs or have some uh, bad results from their inability or their to either take responsibility for themselves or their own poor choices. So in this case, it's this idea that I need to protect somebody and that they're not responsible. And that idea puts a tremendous burden on the person that oversteps what their responsibility is, doesn't realize that their role is to be empowered to make themselves happy, to control their own inner peace, and that each one has that same responsibility and ability to control their own inner peace. So it's our ego saying that if we love somebody, we would somehow have the ability to prevent them from the consequences of their own decision, or what we perceive to maybe be that they're a victim of outside forces of the world, and therefore we need to save them. So uh, when we take this on, we take on more responsibility and we step outside of our role. We've gone beyond the idea of asking the Holy Spirit what love would have us do into our ego's belief that we have the uh, duty or obligation to make someone else a not responsible for their own happiness, but for us to take on that responsibility in their stead. And we normally think that we're kind of doing them a favor. What we're really doing is encouraging their own, uh, we're confirming that they themselves lack the ability to be in charge of their own inner peace. If you think that you have some duty or obligation to fix somebody else, and that if you don't, you feel that you're a failure. And this is what a lot of times spiritual types or people with high responsibility feel. They feel that they're a failure because they weren't able to make somebody else happy. They weren't able to prevent another person suffering the consequences of their own belief that they were a victim. If you think that you could solve everybody's problem, if you think you can solve Tom's problem, how do you handle or how do you solve my problem when my problem is that I don't want my problem solved? Well, I don't want my problem solved by you. It's an impossible situation. You can't. And when you do that, when you think that you can solve Tom's problem, whenever he doesn't want his problem solved, you give me tremendous power. You give me power over your own happiness and inner peace. Because what you've said is that I get to decide whether or not you've done your job in making me happy. And if I want to be miserable, if I want to do the drugs or whatever it might be, uh, it's not your ability to fix me. I'm on my own perfect path. And what unconditional love would do would be to allow, accept, trust and not buy into the idea that they are the body and the body is them, to give them the freedom to be and imagine anything they want, holding the truth that they remain sinless, that they're here to experience, that you're not going to judge them on their journey or make them wrong for the decisions that they need to make to reawaken on their own perfect path. So, what I'd like to do is to look at this idea of when we've felt that we've failed another and that somehow we are still crucifying ourselves for some past experiences where we've perhaps been told by another that we failed them, or we believe that because of how their life turned out, it's our responsibility. And that is the third type of crucifixion that many people, go through in their life, not being able to forgive themselves for some false duty of believing that they had the requirement to make someone be happy. Because of that, he knows that each one has to be given the freedom to control, own their own happiness and inner peace. So this lesson says, it can be but myself I crucify. I like to focus on that third type of crucifixion, where we've really, as an ego, overstepped what our true role was and thought we had a responsibility to fix, save, control, uh, impress, or protect another. Somehow we had felt we had some obligation to change them because they were too stupid or were incapable or weren't given enough talents to be in charge of their own happiness. So, why don't you get in a comfortable position and just become aware of your mind and your ability as a decision maker to place your attention, your focus on any place in the time space continuum that you choose. And what I'd like you to do is to pick some time or some area where you feel that you've failed another person, that maybe their life didn't turn out, or maybe that person told you you were responsible for making them sad, making them unhappy, or for ruining their life. Why don't you look back? And I suspect you can probably find one. Pick one of the probably many, and let's just become aware of that situation. So take 30 seconds or so and come up with one. Okay. It can be but myself I crucify. So let's look at that experience and let's look at it from the standpoint of the person, the parties, each being responsible for their own happiness. If each is responsible for their own actions, their own decisions, do you have the right or the duty to force upon another and to say that they are not capable of handling their own life? Did you perceive that person to somehow be the body, to somehow be a victim of outside circumstances beyond their control? Did you buy into the story that they were an earner or that some outside force could rob them of their own inner peace? Did you actually kind of disempower that person by accepting their idea that they weren't responsible for their own happiness? Did we buy into their story that rather than them playing a role in time and space, that they were actually suffering and that they were the body? Did we, through our beliefs, tend to exasperate or make their suffering appear real to them and perhaps in our own mind? I am not a body, I am free. They are not a body, they are free. For we all remain as God created us. We're all on our own perfect journey. Did this person, himself, herself, tell you that they were a victim of outside forces? Did you buy into this belief that they were not master of their own inner peace? Did you overstep your obligation, your role, which was merely to play a part in their own perfect reawakening to the truth that they are not a body, they are free, for they remain as God created, and that nothing can source their own inner peace unless they choose to allow it? Did you allow them to say, Mary, Tom, you're responsible for my happiness. If you did something else, my life would be perfect. They're here on their own perfect journey. Our ego wants to say we know and can correct what their journey is, that we get to decide that they're somehow mistaken, that they do not require to have that same learning lesson be repeated over and over again, that somehow we have a duty to force our own egoic plan upon them and to correct and overstep our bound as to what love would have us do. And that we need to take responsibility for someone else's happiness. And that perhaps we've been told that we're doing them a favor. And in reality, perhaps at this moment in time, we're actually disempowering them because we're saying that, yes, you are a victim. Yes, you are the body. Yes, your journey, your own perfect journey, isn't perfect. There's something wrong with it, and you're a victim, and or you're still a sinner, and therefore you're not capable of moving and learning on your own. We crucify ourselves when we make more demands than what the role we've been assigned to fulfill. Perhaps you were a parent or are a parent. Your role is to bring that child into the world, support that child, but ultimately the child needs to be on their own perfect path to make them independent, strong. And we disempower another when we buy into the belief that they will always be weak, that they need me to fix them. They're on their own perfect path. They're on their journey. We need to go within, ask ourselves what love would have us do, and follow that rule rather than slip into the idea of the ego that love gives us the duty, responsibility to fix, change, control, protect, or impress another because our ego says that they're not on their own perfect path. When we do that, we put them in the prison of our own belief that they are a body, that they are a victim, that there are outside forces. Ask yourself for people that have told you that you've ruined their life. How can you fix someone's problem when their problem is that they don't want your help or they don't want their problem fixed? You can't. It's not your job. It's not your responsibility. And therefore, you could forgive yourself. You no longer have to be a guilt catcher of their own belief that they are a victim, that they are not responsible or on their own perfect path. It is but myself that I crucify. And when I follow my ego's voice that says I somehow have a better plan that marries on perfect, that I can somehow be responsible or that I have a duty to fix another, I don't trust in the big picture. I limit them. And by limiting them, I limit myself because now I've given them power to control my own happiness. I've made them the source or the determining factor whether or not they feel I've done my job. And now I allow them to throw that guilt onto me, and I crucify myself by that action. Today, I need to realize that each is on their own perfect path. I need to not overstep the role that we've all been assigned to play in each other's perfect path. I cannot make anyone happy. I cannot make someone have inner peace. It's an inside job. All that I can do is hold out the truth that they remain perfect, whole, and complete. And if they perceive themselves to perhaps need something with the realization that they are on their own perfect path, they ask for help and they truly want it. I can go within, ask what love would have me do, and then follow that guidance, knowing that that action, that guidance will help me reduce my fear and perhaps help someone else reduce theirs. But if I follow that ego's voice that says I need to fix that, actually that voice will increase my own fear because now I will have disempowered myself. I will have given that other person the ability to say, Tom, you failed me. Tom, you accepted responsibility for my happiness, and I've determined you didn't do the job. We crucify ourselves when we perceive another to not be on their own perfect path. I am not a body. They are not a body. They are free, free to make their own decision, free to be on their own perfect path. And unconditional love would allow me and them to follow their own decision, be responsible for their own happiness, their own inner peace. It's true, we may be able to help each other on that journey, but you cannot make someone else happy. You cannot make another one that perceives themselves to be not perfect, whole, and complete. What you can do is honor them, hold the truth as to what they are, and forgive yourself for the crucifixion that you felt because you thought you could somehow fix, change, or control. Get off that cross of self crucifixion, of another's trying to lay the blame, shame, and guilt game for you not making them happy. Give them the freedom to be in charge of their own life and open the cell, and you'll find you were in the prison. Whatever you've done in the past was exactly what you needed to do. It was the way to reduce your fear. There's no blame, shame, or guilt associated with it. Everybody is free from their past. You have no guilt. If I was you, if I was in that position, if I had your beliefs, your past decisions, we each would have done exactly what you did. There's nothing wrong with what you did. You're on your own perfect path. Need to realize each is on their own perfect path. We all have taught and learned and played in each other's game, our own, and they're learning a lesson. And you've played your part perfectly. You can unplug any blame, shame, or guilt unplug those, because that was your role at that time and space, and now you're free. I am not a body. I am free. I am still as God created me, and I will no longer crucify myself for my misbelief, my ego's belief that I had some duty, obligation, or right to fix someone else because they were too stupid or a victim of outside force. I mistook their body, their role, for what they truly are. Today, I forgive all and move forward, knowing that everything is unfolding perfectly. You're on your own perfect path. They're on their own perfect path. And I bless them. I bless myself. I give myself permission to unplug any blame, shame, or guilt associated with the past. I did exactly what was supposed to happen at that moment. That's exactly what everybody needs. No blame, no shame, no guilt. Everyone on their own perfect path. So today, remember that it's but I, myself, I crucify. And being a perhaps a loving person, a responsible person, a spiritual person, just be aware that we often believe we need to fix somebody when we fail to realize that they didn't need any fixing. They needed the learning lesson that those past experiences were designed to teach so that they could reawaken to the truth. And my job today is to hold that truth, that all my sisters, all my brothers remain as God created them, perfect, whole, and complete, part of the oneness of all that is. Today, I will not crucify myself any longer. So take a deep breath with that intention and the realization that each is on their own perfect path. And your responsibility is to be responsible for your own happiness, your own inner peace, and follow the voice that God has placed inside you, voice for the Holy Spirit that knows the truth and knows what your role is to play in this grand dance of reawakening. Today, make your day another fun, exciting experience. No blame, no shame, no guilt, just each on their perfect path of reawakening, and hold the truth for all that they are themselves, part of that one self, perfect, whole, and complete. And go about your day guiding, allowing each and knowing that truth. Create a great day for yourself and your world. Namaste. The God in me. Recognize the God in you. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste, Tom. Thank you so much. Fantastic. A great way to bring this lesson 216 to life. Today, it can be but myself I crucify. So I Started at about 4 o'clock this morning, figuring out that I was dragging the cross from yesterday to today. I got a text message from my boss who said he was disappointed, and I hate disappointing people. And, it's also not my responsibility to caretake him. And what I can do is use the information he gives me as a way to find a path through the problem that he's presenting. And that should resolve the disappointment if communication is good. And I got a meeting with him today, and a ton of work has been done. And so if I can show him that we are making progress, all will be well. But seeing that from the position of panic and hating to disappoint someone, I don't get to the solution. It'll take me a week to get to the solution that way. But slowing down and seeing it from his perspective, talking with Adriana about it a little bit and getting some other person's perspective who helped me stop and see it from his perspective and really try and put myself in his shoes. And why is he disappointed? What is he facing? What's the issue? And realizing that there's a couple of things from a couple of perspectives I'm far behind on. There's a bunch that I'm ahead on, and it's a complicated situation, but the more I can do to resolve the things that I'm behind on, the better. And I've got 6 hours between now and our meeting this afternoon, which is a ton of time to be able to fix stuff. So um, I'm looking forward to getting in there and fixing my stuff and making it better. And the more I take any kind of criticism, feedback as constructive stuff, the more I can manipulate the information so that I can create it in a way that it becomes constructive, the faster I can speed through the problems, and the more I can take care of in a day, and the more I can take care of the ones that I love. That's why we work. We work so that the kids can have food and all that kind of stuff, but at a fundamental level, we work to serve God. And that's what serves us at the deepest level. And so my first job of the day is to come here and read this lesson. And I really appreciate you guys being here with me. It's been about an hour. I'm going to wrap up the streams right now, unless anybody has something they want to jump in and say. Going once, going twice.
You can end the stream and we can continue the conversation.